Okay, and I'd now like to introduce our panel to discuss a little bit about what we've heard today. So could I ask Simon Bridges, Auckland Business Chamber CEO, Viv Beck, Heart of the City Chief Executive, and Mark Thomas, who is Director at the Committee for Auckland, to join me on the stage, please, for a bit of a chat. All right. Well, welcome to the panel. I wanted to begin by asking, we've just heard from the Minister and we've heard from our Mayor, and I guess I wanted to ask you what your thoughts are about where Auckland is heading now, given what we've heard. It seemed like Auckland was getting back on track after COVID, and then of course we were hit by the Auckland anniversary floods and then Cyclone Gabriel and now a tornado. But how do you think the longer term outlook is for Auckland in your various positions? Perhaps Simon, would you like to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, I grew up in Auckland. It's a great, or I think it has been a great city. It's really interesting being back and seeing it, I suppose, with fresh eyes. I think it's had a leadership vacuum. I think the reality is, whatever people, including Simon Wilson, your worship, think about you've filled that at a level, and you've provided some space and momentum there. I would characterise it at the moment by saying, it's a good city. I love this city. I don't know we can say it's a great city at the moment. I think there is a lack of forward momentum. I think we all sort of agree with much of what the Mayor said around, I suppose, the bricks and mortar. The housing, the infrastructure, the transport, the crime, those things that are kind of physical now issues we need to have plans for, and we need to do something about. I think though, as Fran has said before, there's a question about kind of Auckland's mojo and the need to sort of do something about that. And while I'm on my soapbox and I've got the mic for a few seconds longer, I mean, I would sort of suggest one of it, and I agree with what the Mayor was saying about the CBD, is filling the CBD as more people, whether that's international students, tourists, these sort of things, and the government's got a role to play around that. I think it's thinking about our sectors. I think we need to position ourselves and acknowledge the work, the likes of Tataki are doing, but around creative sectors and tech. I think the truth is there, though, look, actually we've made that quite hard. We do well in spite of ourselves, but the government and local government need to really roll out the red carpet, dare I say it, the way an Aussie city would. And I think the other piece that's really important, and I know some of you heard me on this before, but it's around major events. We've got FIFA World Cup coming. I'm not sure we all understand how important that is, that it goes well, and that we have a pipeline of those sort of things, those intangible things that I think will give us a sense of oompha or mojo back.
Yeah, thanks. How about you, Viv? You're obviously based here in the central city. We heard a little bit about the city centre today. I was heartened to see your counts of the pedestrian counts sort of tracking upwards, hitting 200,000 on an average weekday. Is that right? What's your thoughts on our direction?
Well, I agree with a lot of the points that Simon has made, and in fact the Mayor and Michael Wood. I mean, it's pretty exciting from a regional perspective to think about integrated transport planning across different modes and strategies for freight and thinking about the future of the Portland. So all of that's great. I think in terms of the central city, the way we're looking at it right now, I mean, it's hard to put into words what it's like to lose 90% of your customer-facing business overnight, and some of the people in the room will know exactly what that felt like. And I think that was on top of concurrent construction for a couple of years. So I think to be coming out of that and seeing the number of people back, there's a vibe back. The events are certainly bringing people back in. If anyone was at the Korean Festival a couple of weeks ago, actually Desley was, there were thousands of people at an event. We've got some spectacular office fit-outs happening that are bringing people back into the office. So I think the fact that there's so much investment here for the future, recognising the benefit of things like the City Rail Link, the New Zealand International Convention Centre, which when that was about to open, that was another highlight, and then it burnt. So we've had a lot of knocks, but we're grabbing every opportunity now because we do need more people. We need people to feel positive about the opportunity for a central city. I agree that there's an opportunity to convert some of those not so appealing office blocks because, as a city centre resident, it's fantastic to have everything close. So I think we've got to have more people, more vibrant events and things that bring people here, and it's got to be accessible. And the same principle applies to the central city in terms of decent planning. Dean Kimpton, that's what we're about to talk about. And welcome and clean and safe. But let's grab the opportunity, and I think if we all get behind it, this can be really a truly great international city.
Great to have a bit of positivity. Love it. Mark, what would you add?
I don't want to take the positivity down, but I look around the room seeing lots of seasoned Auckland observers here, and the Herald had a cartoon last week that had two guys talking. One said, "Is it true that most fairy tales begin once upon a time?" And the other guy said, "No, most fairy tales begin with a politician promising what they're going to do." and I think the challenge is the delivery, right? And Wayne knows that because, he got elected largely because of a history of delivering. We're lucky in some respects to have Michael Wood as Minister for Auckland. He spent a couple of terms on Auckland Council and is an Auckland-based MP, so also very aware of the challenges, I suppose, too, right? So I think we've kind of got two guys who are probably wary about the promises they're making, which is great. I think we should be encouraged in that respect. They're both bringing kind of content and substance to the party. A Committee for Auckland was established, 25 years ago by Richard Disbury and Ron Carter and others to look long term. So I suppose we're looking less at what's going to happen in this year's budget round and more what's going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years. And part of why we've signed up to doing this benchmarking study is to get a stake in the ground for how we're tracking with peer cities around the world. In some areas we're better than them, but in others we're not. And so we want to have an independent reference point that says, Auckland, you're terrific at this and you're making more progress, and you should do a better job celebrating it, frankly. But also, let's be clear, on these areas, these cities have done it better, and this is how.
Yeah, I do want to ask you a little bit more about that just a little bit later on. But I've got a question for you, Simon. And it's about businesses' relationship with central government, because we know, particularly for Auckland, how important that is. You've been heavily involved with, introducing the new Prime Minister to the business community here in Auckland. What's your read on that now?
Yeah, I think the early signs are good. The proof's going to be in the pudding, though. I think the reality, and I don't think it's telling tales out of school. If you think about the interactions of business people with, a new Prime Minister a day after he became Prime Minister, and then more recently was pretty positive. But he got a pretty clear message, and that was a sense that, look, the government, in terms of Wellington, wasn't in Auckland. It was MIA, if you like. And I think that is why, when I talked about a leadership vacuum, we've got a mayor who's more active, it seems to me, and we've also got now a minister for Auckland. They are saying the right things, but of course what's also true is we've got but a few months to an election, and I think what businesses will be looking forward to is not just the kind of positive noises, but some reality to it in terms of clear policies that they can grab a hold of.
Viv and Mark, to you, beyond that reality that Simon mentioned, what more would you like to see with central government working with Auckland?
I think it's been a phenomenal change, actually, and I agree. I think to be at the meeting on the first day out was brilliant. They are listening and they're playing things back to us. They've heard the importance of events and safety and all the things. So it really is quite a different environment than we had through the depths of COVID, which was very challenging. The proof is going to be in the pudding, and I think we're going to, there's an opportunity. The Mayor made the point about election year. There is an opportunity to get some runs on the board, and I really hope we see them. Actually, not only in terms of the relationship, but also because, we want to, the thing that is concerning for us, FIFA is I'm thrilled we've got FIFA. We don't have a big events pipeline beyond that, and that's an issue because that will bring many, many people here, and they won't only come to the central city. A number of the teams are staying in the central city, but they'll get out into the region as well. It will be really good for our region. But we actually do need to see some things come through from that dialogue, but early indications are good.
I think the biggest thing that's been holding Auckland back actually is not the weather or our failure to invest in this or that. It's actually the point that Greg Lowe from Becca made, the absence of central and local government to kind of agree on a strategy and fund it. And this was something that came out in the Koi2 report last year, Reimagining Auckland. I mean, the big enabling Auckland part of that report was about saying if we don't get a shared view on the priorities and a path to funding it, or actually giving council more permission to get shit done, then that's going to continue to hold Auckland back. And so I think both Wayne and Michael are clearly very focused on that. It's seeing those roadblocks dissipate so that Auckland Council can get on with the stuff it knows how to do and can do better and well. And not, I think, just be wrestled with this tussle. And Simon Bridges was the first Transport Minister who did the first ATAP, the Auckland Transport Alignment Plan, with Len Brown. And that was actually, I think, acknowledged then as quite a celebrated way of getting an aligned view on transport. So it's terrific that Wayne's picking that up with Simon. Let's use that model whilst we've got this imperfect local government structure. Let's use that big picture model of getting the key parties agreed on what the funding priorities are to try and make more progress that way.
I wanted you touched on the benchmarking study, and I know the Mayor mentioned it briefly as well. But I wanted to ask you, what is it that that you hope that will achieve? So you're leading that piece of work. You know, when you look at things like in 2021, I think The Economist named Auckland as the most livable city, which I think surprised quite a few of us in the room. But then you look at other studies and we're, you know, worst for congestion, or you know, among the worst cities in the world for congestion and for housing affordability. So what is it that that you hope to achieve with this piece of work?
We were first in the Economist study in 21. We dropped to 33rd last year, right? Not really because it's measuring things that matter to us. It's because it's measuring to someone in London, right? And Mercer, if you remember the Mercer study, right? For year after year, we were in the top 10, despite the fact that our housing affordability kind of had us in the top 10. So we wanted to get a measure that kind of said, well, what's important to Auckland first? And how should we be measuring that? And the reference point, I suppose, is the Business of Cities, who are the agency in London we're using. Professor Greg Clark founded that agency, and Greg, some of you will know him, he's been involved with Auckland quite a lot, particularly over the early parts of the Auckland Council amalgamation. So we've got people who know Auckland, and we've got this tool, right, that actually, luckily, we don't have to pay a fortune to. The Mayor will like, we've got sort of private sector people in paying for it, which kind of helps. And it's a tool to really say, okay, every year we want to have an annual report that measures how we're faring relative to others. Now, it's got to take account of the priorities, and these are the priorities that Wayne's talked about too, but does it in an independent way that's reportable. And the cities that have used it overseas have seen improved performance. So Oslo, a city we're kind of like referencing, they're sort of like an edge city like Auckland is. Over the 5-6 years they've been doing that, they've moved from sort of leading their peers in 2 out of 10 to leading them in 8 out of 10. Including things like productivity, well-being, and infrastructure. So it's to some extent a tool that's worked for some cities that we think has got the potential to help us too.
Yeah, great. And I do want to open up to the audience for any questions. But before I do that, Viv, a question for you around crime. What are you seeing in terms of crime in the central city? It seems still every day we're hearing about more and more incidents that have taken place. What's your understanding?
So crime and safety has definitely been an issue through COVID, not just in the central city, but across the region. Actually, there's you do hear news every day of ram raids and things. We've worked. In fact, we've done a few things. We've lobbied government really hard throughout COVID because we could see the change, and some of it was we wanted to see stronger police presence and resource. We wanted to see a downtown car park, obviously in the central city. We wanted to see better management of emergency housing. We wanted to see mental health and addiction services. So effectively, we wanted to see cross-agency solutions. Some of it's about crime and some of it is about actually how you deal with some of the things that we were seeing on the street. So we lobbied for hard through that with COVID, and we worked locally with police, MSD and council and others to deal with hotspots. So one of the great things from the change actually in the relationship with Wellington now is that we've had a number of conversations about these issues, and they've appointed now a assistant commissioner in Auckland, and there is a much stronger understanding that we do actually need our fair share of resources, and actually they do need to look across agencies to think about, because not all of it is crime. Some of the things that are making people feel really uncomfortable in the street is some of the social issues that have actually been exacerbated through COVID. So it's a really important issue. Actually, the access to the central city appears more in our research ahead of safety, but safety is a big issue. particularly at night. And if we want the nighttime economy to get back to where it was before, we need to get it right. So actually over the last month we've seen a drop, but the reality is things did increase through COVID. There's no doubt about that. And it's partly local solutions, security. We've got some great people doing some good work in security, but it's also support from central government in terms of resource and cross-agency solutions.
Simon and Mark, would you like to add anything to that, or are you?
No, what she said.
Well, yeah.
I mean, all I would say is actually my point around people and more people in the city actually goes to crime. And, you know, a sense that there's tourists, that there's students around, makes a perception of safety. And I know this argument about how much is real, how much is perception. Well, both are probably true. More people, I think, actually is one of the biggest things to solving some of the crime issues we have.
Yeah, great to see those cruise ships back, by the way. Anyone from the audience have any questions for our panel? Don't be shy.
What about the mayor?
Mayor, have you got a question for us?
Who's going to take it?
I'm not sure our panel can help you with that. A question from Peter Thompson. Yeah.
More Vic, I think. The cones, the one-way streets and shutting down Queen Street, has that really worked?
Well, interestingly, Queen Street remains a third of the central city spend, and it has done throughout COVID. It was worth over $500 million a year before COVID, and last year it was 300 million odd. So it was definitely down through COVID, but it was proportionate to everything else. The thing that we have raised, access, as I said, is the number one issue that we get from not only businesses, because they need customers, suppliers and their staff to be able to get to work okay, but also from Aucklanders. Access is right up there. And the thing that we've always said is that you need to have a holistic lens. With so much construction going on, you need to be thinking not only how do you get around throughout that construction, and by the way, I do agree if we can get the cones down, that would be a big plus, but we also need to think about different modes. I mean, it is extraordinary at the moment to us that you have an arts precinct that has buses only at night and no cabs. It's extraordinary that we have a cycle lane that doesn't connect very well. It's extraordinary that the loading and servicing is not more effective, and new innovations brought into play as well. So in answer to that, Queen Street, the spend is still there, but the frustration is still there. So, you know, we're positive about creating beautiful spaces for people, but the point I'm going to be making to Dean loud and clear is that when I spoke to Stephen Town and Shane Ellison about this 5 years ago, I don't believe we haven't delivered on what should have been delivered, but that is not too late to get it right. Some of it might be harder because it's already been done, but we tend to look at projects in isolation of the next one, and that's a problem when you're thinking about access.
You raised about Queen Street, and if you're driving up, you go up towards the Civic Theatre. Yeah, you can't go straight ahead. You can't turn right. And you go left, and you end up on the motorway.
Yeah.
So where are you supposed to go? And I think these are the sort of things that we seriously need to look at.
They are, and I'm glad you've said that, Peter, because that's the sort of thing that we've been raising, not to stop transformation, but to actually help more people get here more easily.
I'll give you one, Peter, and I'll probably get in trouble for doing it in a public forum, but, you know, I've always been a risk taker. Who knew that upon becoming CEO of the Auckland Chamber of Commerce, I'd have the august position of chair of the Centre Parade Trust bestowed on me, and I enjoy it. It's the highlight of the job. What's really interesting, and I'm coming to see you, Your Worship, about this, and Deputy Worship, it's in its 90th year, right? But here's the thing, it's basically got to a point where it's bloody impossible to have it on Queen Street. Because the road's got too narrow, it's got the wires or whatever they are above it, and so we have to consider our options about going to a much more motivated Ponsonby Association or Newmarket as a result of that. And that'll be the haggling that we'll be doing, right, in its 90th year. So, you know, these things aren't particularly well thought through.
No, they're not.
And there are some really real issues with Queen Street that frankly, Dean and AT do need to think more about.
I agree.
Yeah. Oh, have we got one more? Okay. Yeah, sure. Oh, Councillor
Kia ora.
Josephine Bartley.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to ask a question. I've heard a lot about the city centre, about road cones, but I just wanted to hear from the panel, given the, we've got a whole lot of business people here, what is the vision for business for our city? Because, we're talking visionary, someone mentioned being positive. I want to hear that. Let's hear the visionary stuff, please. Thank you.
I mean, I think a couple of things. Interesting hearing Mark, and I really appreciate what he and some of his colleagues are doing with the Committee for Auckland. I will say, as a shot across the bow, maybe just even some of you in this room, the reality is that 20 years ago, with the likes of Ron Carter, we had business leaders who did stand up about stuff that sometimes were a bit controversial, put their head above the parapet. I don't know that we see a lot of that anymore. And, that's understandable. It's difficult. Wayne and the likes of myself and Viv as well possibly know the perils of that. But I do think there is a place in Tamaki Makaurau for more courage from our business leadership. I think, dare I say it, we see it in the Sydneys and the Melbournes a bit more than we do in the Aucklands. And so there is a case that. All of that said, you mentioned, Councillor, vision. I think perhaps what we want more than ever is real plans and strategies, and we possibly haven't seen enough of that. We've probably got enough vision. We possibly haven't got enough of that when it comes to things like transport, crime, and the like.
Yeah, if I think of the central city, I mean, we've had no shortage of innovators and visionaries. And you think about the Cooper & Co's and the precinct properties and the Tram Co's that have really done outstanding work. And one of the things that we're celebrating right now is the fact that we're starting to see that come. We've had over a decade of this, and you look out at the really great work and think, this is amazing. There's a lot of other investment happening out there right now, and these are people, putting themselves at risk to invest, and they're recognising the City Rail Link, the New Zealand International Convention Centre. We've got Sky City here. They've done great work around that area, and it's going to be fantastic when that actually opens. So there are actually many people with a lot of vision and keen to be part of a really great international city, a place of excellence and innovation and learning and living in a vibrant place. But we do need the enablers. We need the transport. I totally agree with you, Peter. It's excruciating to listen to that feedback that hasn't been taken account of. And I'm hopeful that it will now, because that's the sort of thing we need. And people do need some certainty to back up that investment. So I think we should acknowledge the great innovators we've had and visionaries we've got, but make sure that the things they need to thrive and others to take those risks have got that support.
Can I just, Joe, you reminded me of the Auckland Future Now event, which Tataki Auckland Unlimited does a great job of running every year. And this year it was a smaller event, sort of, I suppose, asking the private sector and NGOs to kind of step up and be more involved actually in answering that question. And interestingly, we did a roundtable about what are the big issues that you think we should be focusing on making progress on in Auckland this year. The city centre came up as one in terms of things to be fixed. And I think, the idea that we can leave this to agencies, council agencies to fix, that's not going to happen, right? And so the call was for more businesses and NGOs to get involved as part of the fix. And the second one was the vision. And Councillor Richard Hills made a really terrific sort of insight to say there's huge challenges facing council and any of us kind of, I suppose, working in council-related agencies. But what's hanging together the vision to drive that? And certainly, look, Fix Auckland is a vision. I mean, that's absolutely something that focuses the mind. I think the question that group fed back, is that enough? And is that enough to get more of us involved, to Simon's point, actually doing what we can, with the experiences we had, to sort of answer your question, Joe? Because it's not a business vision we need, isn't it? It's kind of like the new Tamaki Makaurau Auckland vision, for the next decade. What is that vision? And a clearer articulation of that resonates with everyone will get more of us on board, I think, helping to fix the problem.
Yeah, final question, and we've only got time for it'd be like 30 seconds from each of you, but I couldn't help but notice when you read the Project Auckland report, it is very positive, and I think we've heard a lot of positivity today. So I wondered if I could ask each of you, and I am going to throw to the Mayor for the final comment on this, could I hear from each of you one thing that you're looking forward to over the coming 12 months for the city? Mark, why don't you start us off?
Specifics, right? Specifics. I think we're over announcements of announcements and the intentions. We need specifics, and I think the Mayor's got a very clear agenda of action, which is fantastic. So it's just colouring in between the lines, I think, and I guess that's where the government needs to step up, but not just the government, right? Those of us who also have the capacity to be involved as part of helping the colouring in. Maybe we need to have some pencils shared around and we can add to that, because it's not just Wayne's job or Michael Wood's job, but it does require them often sort of collaborating together to bring us up to help.
Yeah, sure. Viv.
Oh, look, I've made it clear how important all those things are at a macro level for the central city and the wider region. But the thing that I'm excited about is FIFA, because I think we don't really know quite what's under our nose there in terms of so many people coming here. And I think given where we've been, that is going to give us a real shot in the arm.
I was going to say FIFA.
You were going to say FIFA.
But as number 2, I'll go with the Centre Parade on Queen Street.
Yes, I'm with you on that.
That's supported and helped by a city that wants it.
Yeah.
Nice, very diplomatic. And Mayor Brown, would you like to add a comment?
Passing the budget would be really... For those in here, I was just say passing the budget, with a mixture of responses, which is what we've offered. Yeah. Selling a few things, lifting things, and not being too tough on those whose mortgages have been increased by the lady beside me, amongst others. So we've got a nice mixture of things, and I just hope that my fellow councillors can see that you have to sell some things, cut a bit here and cut a bit there, and do a bit everywhere, and we'll all get through a bit rather than just relying on too much. And the last thing we need to do is more debt, just given the situation with another $500 million of City Rail Link and the costs of the storm coming up. So sensible results would be really great. Then I can get on with the 5 things that I wanted to do in the first place. Thanks.
Sensible results. There we go. Could you please join me in thanking the panel for their time today? Thanks a lot. And can I ask Shane Curry to come and give a vote of thanks for today? Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. Kia ora. I'm Shane Curry, the editor-at-large of NZME and the Herald, and it's my duty to give a vote of thanks for everyone who participated today. I just really wanted, just sitting and listening to the panel and earlier, Your Worship, Mayor Brown, I mean, there's no shortage of engagement and interest in the future of the city. We notice that ourselves through our various platforms at NZME and, of course, engaging with a lot of you day to day. And you only needed to be at Rod Stewart's concert on Saturday or Sunday night at Spark Arena, and the man himself is very interested in the infrastructure in the city. He almost tripped on a pavement and held the council to account for that. So there's engagement and interest in the city, obviously from the dwellers, the people who live here, but beyond as well. And I think the message about getting Wellington to Auckland is a really important one. So, Mayor Brown, on behalf of us all, thank you for your speech today. It's wonderful having a firebrand mayor in charge from a media perspective. I think it's really important. For those of you who didn't get a serve today, I'm sure one is coming at some point. But no, and in reality, what Simon mentioned in terms of business leaders standing up, I think that's also a really important point as well. To the Honourable Michael Wood, who we heard, obviously he's involved in a cabinet meeting today, so couldn't be here, but thank you to him. To our panel, Simon, Viv and Mark, thank you so much. And congratulations, Fran, on another awesome effort with Project Auckland. It's one of the highlights of the publishing calendar for us. Thank you to you all for your attendance, and finally thank you to all our sponsors and supporters, because honestly we couldn't be here without you, and I know Project Auckland 32-page lift out in today's Herald and online lists all of our amazing sponsors, so thank you again. Thanks.
Thank you, Shane. And yeah, just once again, thank you all very much for being here today. I know that Auckland's future is important to all of us. There is now coffee and some petit fours out in the foyer, so please do continue to network out there. And when you do leave, make sure you take a copy of this report with you if you haven't already received one in your daily New Zealand Herald that I'm sure you'll all receive at home. There's 32 pages of great analysis in there. But I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day and the short week ahead. Thank you all very much.